again, welcome. My name is Hope Boers. I lecture in content management and content strategy at the University of Applied Sciences in Amsterdam. And together with my colleagues from the Bilgi University in Istanbul, the Media University or University of Media of Stuttgart, and the University of Oslo and Akershus, we organize the intensive program Youth on the Move. And today I want to talk to you about not only the intensive program, but also much more about how we perceive educating people to become good journalists. So how do we teach journalism in the connected age? And I want to do two things today. I want to first of all try to define what drivers there are, technical drivers and drivers of change in media, and see how they influence the media professional of today, and especially the journalist. And then I want to see how we think that this special curriculum and special changes should find their way into a course program, and especially in an intensive program, which is a program that lasts 2 weeks. Okay. So you can use the space bar. Yeah. Okay. So. It's a European theme that we have. It's called Youth on the Move, and it's quite a curious name for an intensive program that's about journalism. So first I want to try to introduce the concept of Youth on the Move and why we chose this concept as the name and the theme of our intensive program. As you can see, it's a cooperation between 4 different schools, the Box School in Oslo, as I said, Akershus in Norway, Hogeschool in Amsterdam, the University of Applied Sciences, and Hogeschool in Armenian, and Istanbul Bilgi University. And what we try to do is we try to look at Europe and the young people in Europe and see how they move about Europe and the chances they have on the European job markets and the chances they have on landing internships across the border of their own national countries in Europe. That's raised by the European Union to actually try to improve the mobility of youth in Europe in the job and in the labor market, but also in trying to have students go to different countries and try to study in different countries. So why do we take this issue? This issue is very important because our students are of this group of people, and the students that we want to have following this intensive program are of this group of people. And they're actually faced with these issues themselves, and they can help other students and other young people to overcome borders and find greater mobility within Europe and also at the borders of Europe. As you can see, we have schools from the European Union countries and schools from countries that are very close to the European Union and indeed may well be at some time in the future become part of the European Union. So we invite these students to follow the intensive program, and it serves as a research theme for the journalist students to actually create a new medium, create a new product for these different groups of students so that they may improve their mobility. Yes. So, what is the actual drive of the change that we face in journalism today? Well, we call that convergence, and we live in the age of convergence, and it's been happening for the past years, past decade or so. And we see that the positioning of the traditional broadcast media is changing due to all kinds of factors. What we see is that the landscape itself is fundamentally changing because we have all kinds of new technologies working together. We see that traditional broadcasting media are no longer the primary news source. They are a very important news source, and they reach still a great audience, because a great audience is traditionally bound to these broadcast media, but they're using the different channels differently than they would 10, say 20 years ago. Now we see very much a horizontal integration of all these channels. We have TV and radio integrating, telling stories across the borders of these channels, and actually trying to emphasize or trying to use cross-media storytelling to get a point across even more firmly, even more detailed, and also reaching a larger audience by using these different channels. So what you get is innovative new ways of doing cross-media storytelling. Different channels cooperating together and creating multi-channel perspectives. For instance, if you see the Arab Spring uprisings in Northern Africa, you saw that the stories were told not only from the perspective of the traditional broadcast media, but also from the blogosphere, people from the ground, and investigative journalists in the war zones themselves. You have all these different perspectives, all adding to an overall storyline. So how do we train students to actually get into that kind of frame of thinking? A different driver as well is that the way we consume media. It's not just the way we produce or distribute media, it's also the way that we today, and the new generations today, consume media. And this is rapidly changing. As you can see that there are fast changing trends. We got new devices that were traditionally used only for communication are now not just for interpersonal communication, but also for communicating ideas and stories to a large audience. What we can see is that there are dynamic adaptive content strategies are required by the traditional media companies. They're not just focusing on the broadcasting medium, but you also have to focus on the people that use these cell phones, smartphones, or what we call the new media technologies that are no longer just technologies that are in the home or even in a laptop, but are also increasingly mobile, in the shape of smartphones, in the shape of tablets. And these are all new platforms where they can consume news, but not only consume news, it also makes the users themselves the originators of stories, the originators of narratives, of news. So, user-generated content is ever more important. And with user-generated content, we mean anything from videos that are uploaded to a service like YouTube. It could be a tweet on a certain subject or something that you see yourself as a civilian in the field, which can have a huge story impact, news impact. For instance, once I sat in Amsterdam in a tram, and the tram was held up, and we couldn't leave the tram, and we heard a helicopter circling overhead. So I checked my smartphone, and I found very early that we were held up because there was a robbery in progress further up the street. So I found out this not using traditional news sources, but just searching the Twitter feed and searching for a robbery and searching for on the street name, and I found that earlier than I found that on the local news media. So this is a very important new way of finding and creating news stories. And then we could say that this has all kinds of theoretical implications. Because if news stories are enriched, if news sources are no longer official sources, then you could well ask yourself, who is the owner of the content? So theoretically, we could say that, or even in practice, we could say that copyright laws might in time become outdated, and we have to update copyright laws. And we have to see who ultimately is the owner of a story. These are all things that we try to address in our intensive program. So that's very much part of the content of the course.